What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Now, I know a lot of you have been getting accustomed to me posting my live poker YouTube vlogs, and I haven't in a minute. And I apologize for that, but I actually ended up getting COVID a little bit ago and haven't been traveling much. It's been a new year. I've just been settling a little bit after WSOP, but I am going to be getting back into that in the near future. So in the meantime, I've been posting some Twitch highlights, some update videos, and then also I'm about to present to you a coaching session video where I was getting coaching from Matt Affleck. If you do not know him, he's a 15+ year pro. He's got over 3 million in live earnings, and it was an incredible session. And after I had the Twitch stream, people were like, "Oh, can we watch it back? We want to see it again." It was a great stream. It was super informative. So I figured, all right, I'm going to post this on YouTube. So here it is. It's about 2 hours or so. So it's a lot of information, but the concepts and everything we talk about are really, really good. Matt is a great coach. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this video, and I will catch up with you later. There we are. There's Matt. Hey, Matt.
How's it going?
Good, good.
Yeah, thanks for letting me do this. This will be fun. I've never kind of done anything like this live. I mean, so I'm gonna kind of structure this just how I do a normal like one-on-one coaching session with my clients, but I've never done anything this live on Twitch, so it's pretty exciting for me. I'm looking forward to this all day. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. I was stuff like this for streamers is, I think, interesting because you kind of, like I know my game to a certain extent, and some people will even just like ask me, like, do you do coaching? I think because I am pretty good at dumbing stuff down, but then now to expose yourself and put yourself out like this, like, you know what I mean, with the coaching, there was a time where it might make me nervous, but now it makes me excited because the big thing that I kind of want to express to my community is like, this is how you get better. You know what I mean? You have better players like rip apart your game and give you constructive feedback, and you need to be able to absorb it, so I'm super looking forward to this.
Yeah, and like props to you for sure. Because when I first reached out, I said like normally I do a database review, but I don't know if you want to do that live on stream. One for like going through and like specifically picking out like leaks like that, and like having that in like out there in terms of like people that you play against might watch this and stuff, but also like the side you said of just like in a public forum like that. So it's really cool that you're open to that. That's why I was like, yo, do you want to do a hand history review or just a spot? But this will be great, and these database reviews are great. The goal of this first 30 minutes doing the database review is these numbers aren't be all end all. They're not gonna, the goal of what we want is potential areas to look into. I might notice a number is off. It could be a sample size issue. There could be other things going on where it's like, nope, I don't see anything wrong there. We're looking for areas to dive into. And then that's kind of where we'll spend the latter half of, 45 minutes to an hour, just kind of diving into these spots that I think are potentially trouble areas that I notice.
Okay, cool. So that's typically also how your coaching would go. Your personal coaching that you offer is about a 30-minute database review and then about an hour talking about what you saw.
Yeah, so standard sessions about 90 minutes. That's how I like to do it. I used to do 60, and it's just not enough time. It goes by really quick. So 90-minute session, like the first session, I always like to do a database review. If a person has a poker tracker database with a large enough sample size, something 30, 50,000 hands, go through there, and it gives us areas to look. And we'll have I'm going to take some notes. We'll literally have a checklist. I'll kind of mark things as like red flag things, and then I'll mention some other stuff that's like, yeah, you should note this, you can look on it on your own, but it's not the most important thing today to look at, type of things. And so we'll probably have like a few kind of like red flags things. I'm like, all right, let's dive into that stuff today. Maybe it's c betting out of position, or turn c betting, or you're folding to steal, something like that. And then kind of the goal of all the first sessions is we come out with like a list of 3 to 5 topics, and it's kind of like a bullet point checklist where like next session we just say, all right, we're hitting c betting out of position that we're struggling with. Next session we're doing c betting in position or turn c betting. And a lot of students like to come with like a hand history review, like, hey, let's go through this hand history. Great, it's easy, it's more entertaining, but I don't really see a ton of value in it. it's really hard to learn where one hand you're looking at a button versus big blind spot. The next hand you're looking at cutoff versus button. The next hand's a 3-bet pot, a 4-bet pot. You're not seeing patterns and consistent patterns. But if you're working an entire session on c-betting out of position, let's say, and you look at 20 straight hands where you raise the cutoff and the button calls, you're going to a lot quicker notice the patterns and be able to implement those patterns and notice them in game a lot quicker since you've noticed them. You've seen it 20, 30 times in a session. Nice.
Makes sense. Excuse me. So we have this filtered here. Matt has a specific database review format that I've imported into my poker tracker. And we have this sorted to January of last year. So all of 2021 through the first month here of 2022. It's not a large sample here that I have because I played a lot live last year and I'm multi-site. But Matt said this should be a good enough sample for us to get a vibe, right?
100%.
All right. So how do you want to get started here?
We'll go in. I'm just gonna stats on the top. I'll kind of read it, and I'm gonna dive into everything. So the first stat we'll look at here is your all-in adjusted big blind per 100. So this is your win rate. Overall, you're winning at about 5 big blinds per 100, which is very solid. You'll see that at the bottom. That's a very solid win rate. Like if you're winning at like 10 big blinds per 100, I'd say you should be moving up in stakes. If you're winning at 2 big blinds per 100, you know, that would be an issue in terms of might not even be beating the games that you're playing in. Like this is, you know, seems very, very solid to me, somewhere in that 5 to 7 range for sure.
Okay.
Looking at the positions though, the two positions I see where there's like a pretty big area for improvement in your win rate potentially is on the button. You're winning at 19 big blinds per 100, and the small blind at like minus 21 big blinds. Specifically the button, that number should be north of 30, probably high 20s, maybe 30, 35 big blinds per 100. That's where a lot of your win rate comes in poker. Everything I do is button, small blind, big blind. That's where all the money's made in poker. That's where a majority of your win rate is, and those are like the big areas that need to be like nailed down.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So like, you know, the button, I think, you know, 30, 35, something like that. The small blind can probably be like minus 15 or minus 10. So keep in mind it's negative, but you start at minus 50. And the minus 50 is because you start with half a big blind per hand. Multiply that by 100 hands, you're starting at a negative 50 big blinds per 100.
Gotcha.
So those would be like the two positions, kind of the specifically probably the button win rate, and then potentially small blind win rate to look into. Next little stat that we'll point out here is your raise limp BVB. So what this is how often you raise in the big blind once the small blind limps. I like that number should be north of 45%.
Okay.
If you look at like GTO charts, if you just pull up any of the charts that I'm sure you have access to, at almost every stack depth, it's going to be about 45%.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think you can even go higher than that because people really struggle to defend versus these when they limp the small blind, they really struggle to defend their limps. So potentially even going to like 50%, something like that. You can start to punish small blind limps more often.
Okay.
While we were kind of waiting, the first one that I saw that might be something to look into is your call preflop 2-bet from EP at like 8% here. It's 7.77 is pretty high. So that's right next to the raise limp. You'll see call preflop 2-bet.
Oh, okay. Yep.
There you go. So an EP, so you're in early position, you have to be facing an early position raise. You're flatting almost 8%. That number should probably be about 4 or 5%.
Okay.
And it doesn't sound like much because it's only like 2% off, but that's about 50% more hands that you're flat calling there.
Gotcha.
And let's compare that to on the far right, you see 3-bet pre-flop there. Yep, right there.
Yep.
In EP, you're at 7%. You should be 3-betting more than you should be flatting. So when you're in EP there, I would expect something like a 60-40 split where you're 3-betting like 60% of the time and flatting 40% of the time in early position. Maybe it's like a 6 or 7% 3-bet and then like a 4 or 5% flat call. So potentially, I think you're flat calling too much in early position and not 3-betting enough in early position, and probably playing too many hands because you're almost at 14% there in early position. So not a huge thing,
right?
But I would be looking in some of these early position spots where you're facing raises.
Okay.
There. Does that do you feel kind of when you're facing raises in early position that you might be a little bit too loose? Do you feel that you're flatting a lot? Does that kind of ring any bells?
I feel like I for sure like that is kind of connect with me. I do think that I'm probably, like you're saying, flatting too much. Yeah, I'm probably, and I feel like it's probably a specific stack depth, because I can just, off the top of my head, I'm thinking about some situations where I probably don't want to 3-bet fold a hand, you know, so I decide to just flat. That's what this feels like. It feels like there's something like right around there, you know what I mean?
Yep, 100%. And that's often what I will see. And I think like a good thing to remember is just the EV, the expected value of flatting in early position is just not very high. And because it's not high, EV of flat calling, that's why you see that ratio where you often choose the 3-bet option in early position, because there's so many disadvantages of calling. You're going to go multi-way, you're going to be out of position to other people, you're going to get squeezed. There's just so many negative things that can go against you that are going to cut down on your EV when you're flat calling, versus when you 3-bet, you kind of eliminate a lot of those situations. And that's why if you look at a chart, almost actually, I actually want to say every hand, but I'll to be safe, I'll say almost every hand, besides like aces and kings and stuff, mixes 3-bets and calls in every chart.
Gotcha.
And what that mix means is when a chart says call 70%, 3-bet 30%, it means the EVs are very, very close.
Gotcha.
So something to look into there, for sure. I could see that. Fold to steal. So that will be the next number right here.
Okay.
Those both seem slightly elevated. So you're folding about 45% in the big blind.
Okay.
And 75% from the small blind.
Alrighty.
Big blind, I can see more high 30s, something like that, 38, somewhere out in there. So slightly elevated, not like a huge thing. And then small blind, probably about 70%.
Okay.
So not playing enough hands. And what I typically see is people find a lot of the 3-bets and stuff, but they don't just realize how like often you can just flat from the small blind. Like when the button opens, like king 4 suited is just a pure call.
Okay.
In most situations. And those are the types of hands that like a lot of people I see just miss, that are really, really profitable opens, especially because everyone's min raising nowadays. And most charts you see are like 2.3x. So you're actually getting even better odds than you would most of the time see.
Gotcha. So you think probably, based on what you're saying, not calling enough potentially could be the most common mistake here in the small blind if we're overfolding?
Yeah, potentially. Your 3-bet number looks a tiny bit low from the small blind, but not much. Like it could be like 10%, something like that, 10.5. So like the 9.59 you have there is your small blind 3-bet number.
This one big blind, yeah, for the 3-bet.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, 11%. Yeah, it seems fine. Your 3-bet from the small blind. The big blind from your 3-bet from the big blind can actually be a little bit higher.
Okay.
But we can look into that. That's there's another stat I have here that will help with that.
Okay. Cool.
So raise first in, all those numbers are low. So the button you're raising about 40%, that number should be 50.
Okay.
From the cutoff, you should be somewhere around like 35, 36%. Okay. But then middle position and early position look fine. But the most profitable thing that can happen to you in poker is you raise and you steal the blinds. And so when we're in the cutoff and the button, got to really make sure that we're not missing opens in the cutoff and the button. That's a huge part of our win rate there. So double checking opening ranges that we're not missing opens from those two positions, especially because a lot of people still overfold their big blind.
Okay, makes sense.
Yep. You want to scroll, go ahead and scroll to the right so we just see the next set of stats.
Okay. How's that right there?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
And we're not going to look at all these numbers, but
Already?
yeah. So the next one, your 3-bet steal number. So to the right, keep going right there.
Yep.
So this is how often you 3-bet versus a small blind or a big blind open.
Okay.
These numbers can go even higher to like the high teens, something like 17, 18, maybe even you could push it to 20% if you really want to get crazy here. But especially from the big blind.
Okay.
Everyone nowadays just thinks like, because no one 3-bets from the big blind, so everyone just assumes it's this super value heavy range, and you just get a lot of respect when you 3-bet from the big blind. In like a GTO, like you're supposed to 3-bet a button open from the big blind about 18% of the time, something like that. And so you could probably even get away with going more than that. But really, like, these are money printers. 3-betting versus cutoff and button opens, because people really struggle to defend their wide range opens from the cutoff and the button.
Okay. Makes sense. I could see that. And so you said about 18 from big blind. Did you mention the small blind?
Small blind would be slightly less, but I would say something like, high teens for both. I'd like to see both like around like 17%, 18%, something like that. So that wraps up like the pre-flop portion.
Okay.
But like the two big things would be like call your early position, call pre-flop 2-bet. So how often you're cold calling an early position.
Okay.
And then making sure the RFI numbers are higher. Those are like the two big pre-flop things that I would be focusing on.
Okay. Chat, I'm going to take some notes here on the big things. Calling too much in EP. Need to 3-bet blind, small blind versus LP more. Not opening enough from MP on.
Yep, that would pretty much sum it up here for where I'm seeing.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so that was pre-flop stuff. Now, where did you want to go next?
So the next set are all going to be flop stats. So we'll see C-bet stats, fold to C-bet stats. So it's all kind of pre-flop, flop, turn. So, all right. So first stat we'll look at here is, so that's your overall C-bet flop.
Yep.
And we can break it down here. The next one is the one I want to look at is C-bet flop in position, heads up.
Okay.
So this is when you raise, you have a single caller, and it has to be either the big blind or the small blind. I'd like to see all those numbers increase to like north of 70%. Almost everyone is over folding to C-bets and doesn't check raise enough. And like, I would say like normally I'd like to see this number at 70, and if it's even a little bit higher because of those two reasons, I don't even mind. So I'd like to see that in position C-bet increase, but I do like that you are positionally aware. So you can see here on the button, you C-bet about 62% of the time versus the small blind or the big blind. But in early position, you're C-betting almost 70%. So you're being positionally aware in terms of you're C-betting more from early position and less from the button, which makes sense and is true because you have a wider range from the button. You shouldn't be C-betting enough or as much as you do from early position when you have a stronger range.
Gotcha. Okay.
But like, I would like to see that, like, that button number can probably get to like 70%, something like that. And your early position number can probably get to like 80%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that in position C-bet, increasing that number for sure.
Okay. To C-bet more in EP. And button. Sure. And button we were looking at 70%, and EP we were looking at like 80%. All right, great. All right, sweet.
So the next one is C-bet flop out of position, heads up. And I actually see the opposite of what I described before of being positionally aware. And can you kind of point out to me what I'm kind of seeing here?
Right here?
Yeah.
I am out of position, C-betting way less.
So, which is true, which is what you want.
Right.
But here in the cutoff,
Mm-hmm.
so in this spot, you're in the cutoff versus the button, right?
Yep.
That's your widest range spot you can have.
Mm-hmm.
You're c-betting the most versus an early position. When you have the strongest range, you're only c-betting about 30% of the time. So we're not being positionally aware on our out of position c-bet spots. And I would say we're c-betting quite a bit too much from late position and not enough from early position.
Gotcha. I'm trying to think. So this is EP right here, yeah?
Anytime you raise from EP, so that could be EP versus EP, EP versus low jack, or EP versus button. The cutoff can only be cutoff versus button.
Yeah.
And from studying, I know like cutoff versus button, globally, your c-bet percentage should be about 25-30%. And that sounds really low.
Yeah.
And so I like to explain it this way. So you're raising from the cutoff. Earlier we said you should raise from the cutoff with what, around 35% of hands is what you're going to be raising from the cutoff. The button is going to flat with 15%, something like that. Yes, they don't have aces, kings, queens, and jacks, and ace king, but you have 35% of the deck. The button has 15% of the deck. You're out of position. Not a lot of things looking good for us in terms of what the properties that we like to look at in terms of a good spot to continuation bet. Because we're out of position, we have a weaker range, and like those two big things. And yes, we have aces, kings, and queens and jacks, but because of how wide our range is, those hands make up such a small portion of our overall range that they don't make up for those other two situations that are going against us, where we actually play a pretty heavy check in that spot.
Got you. That makes sense.
Versus when we're in early position, our range is like, let's say we raise an early position, we're raising like 18% of hands.
Yep.
The button calls with 12-15%. That gap now is much closer, and those big pairs make up a way bigger portion of our range.
Yeah.
Where we're going to be doing a lot more like early position versus button, you're probably c-betting like 60% of the time.
Okay.
Versus that cutoff versus button, you're c-betting 30% of the time.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
So that's like c-betting out of position here, especially from late position, and actually early position not enough. That's so c-betting out of position is going to be something that we want to look into for sure. And that's probably the most common topic that I coach on. It's a topic where people really struggle with.
60% and cut off cents. Okay, cool. Percents listed are targets. Okay, that makes sense. I'm trying to think how I mixed that up, essentially. You know what I mean? I know that I felt like there was a time when I was over c-betting, like out of position a lot. So this is actually really interesting, and I had made a big adjustment to c-bet less because I think it was actually 2020 actually. Wow, that's crazy, a year passed already, but I think it was 2020. I remembered I was getting in a lot of situations where I was c-betting out of position when I'd missed, which could be like maybe I was opening too much at the time, a little too wide. But then I was getting into a lot of situations where people were just not folding the c-bets, and then I was forced to either barrel or go into a check call mode. There was like something there. And then I remember I had a session, I had a few sessions with Faraz, and he was talking about kind of just c-betting out of position. My sizings were like too big, which I'm trying to think back to 2020. Potentially I was c-betting bigger to help negate the positional disadvantage, maybe get more folds. Because obviously if we're out of position and we bet like a third, people can float us a lot more, right?
Of course, yeah.
So I think something happened in there is the only thing I can think of as far as why these would be so like backwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just like probably just a failure. Like people need to recognize that when you raise in late position, your
Hmm.
range is just so wide, and way much, you have way more junk than your opponents. And you need to account for that.
Yeah.
And while you would mention you could size up your C bets to neglect, yes, they're going to fold more, but
Hmm.
the range that they continue with now is much stronger. And so now you're going to run into problems with on the turn where you're not going to be able to barrel the turn
Hmm.
because their range is too strong now.
Gotcha. There's a quick question in chat. It says, as far as our conversation that we're having here, how applicable do you think this is to cash games versus what I typically play tournaments? These concepts that we're going to talk about.
I think the concepts like apply the same, but the ranges are going to be completely different,
Hmm.
and that's going to make them like not be able to like one for one just copy over. But it's going to be the same situation when like you raise in a cash game
Hmm.
in the cutoff and you get flattened on the button. The button's always going to have a more condensed range with you, and you're going to be doing a lot of checking.
Okay.
It's like the same type of situation, but like the ranges are just going to be way different. You're going to have a tighter opening range. They're going to have a tighter flatting range.
Gotcha.
For example.
Okay.
So, cool. So, okay. Next one I want to see here is fold to flop c-bet in a non-3-bet pot.
Okay. You could also, if there's anything you want to point at specifically, your mouse clicks it, so it's cool. They can see where you're clicking.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Actually, I want to look at this one because this is heads up.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll put it right here. So this is the same stat, fold to flop c-bet,
Okay.
heads up. And on the button, this number looks pretty high at 40%.
Okay.
So I would say, and you tell me differently, like if you flat the button, like the most typical bet size that you're going to face is probably like 1/3 pot.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
For sure. Yeah.
If you're on the button versus a 1/3 pot bet, your fold percentage should be below 25%.
Okay. Nice.
Something like 20%.
Continue.
So like
I love it.
this like 40% sizing would fold would equate to like you facing like your average bet size is almost like a 2/3 pot bet.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, I see what you're
And
saying.
so
Like,
we're folding too much c bets, and you see the same thing here in the cutoff at 42%.
yeah.
In early position, these ones. So the blinds I think are slightly are elevated as well, especially the small blind. The small blind. So this is a big one here. So
Okay.
especially the small blind. So can you tell me? So the small blind and the big blind number, you have the same fold to c bet
Yep.
percentage. What do you see as a problem with that?
Let's see. Well, I guess big blind. Well, no, if we called, it's the same. I don't know, actually. I'm not sure.
So think about your pre-flop range. What does your pre-flop range in the small blind look like when you call?
Oh, it's
versus
tighter
your-
than the big blind.
Yeah. So you should be folding way less. So you have to overfold the c-bets in the big blind because of how wide your range is, because you
Got you.
got such a great price to call. That small blind number should be well below your big blind number. And we can actually exemplify here that like your cutoff, when you flat the cutoff, you have a pretty strong range. And you're almost folding as much to c-bets there as you do from when you're in the big blind.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay,
So-
that makes sense.
Small blind, fold the c-bet for sure, and then fold the c-bet in all positions. And I'll say like especially like in position, like button cutoff is kind of where I would note those. But yeah, like I kind of like to use them as like a comparison with like what's your big blind fold to c-bet versus your small blind. So
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. That's really interesting. Does that make sense? You know?
Yep, 100%. Man, you are savage on the button. Raise flop c-bet 21% on the button. That's pretty savage. Saucy.
I do some.
Saucy there. You don't. You fold a little bit too much, but you lay the hammer into them. I like it. Your raise flop c-bet numbers look pretty good. Although I would say the button potentially is high.
Okay.
Where on the button we kind of want to like utilize our positional advantage more
Hmm.
and potentially raise less on the button, but that's not a huge deal.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely aggression post flop there. So that's looking good. The next one here, and Poker Tracker uses a weird notation here, this float flop bet.
Okay.
So what Poker Tracker describes as a float flop. So let's say the cutoff raises and you call on the button.
Okay.
And now the cutoff checks. This is a float bet opportunity. Normally a float bet is like when you call, in position. Poker
Right.
Tracker, the float flop is how often you bet versus miss c-bet.
Interesting. I would have thought that would have fallen under like probe, but I guess we're in position, out of position, probe, next street. Yeah.
Yeah. So while you're very aggressive against c-bets in position, we are far too passive out versus miss c-bets.
Okay.
So all these numbers on the float flop, like this would be kind of maybe number one on the list. Number two is these numbers should all be north of 50%.
Got you. And
Especially when you consider that people c-bet too much out of position, which is one of the mistakes that we pointed out with you. And so therefore, most people's checking range is even weaker than it should be. And so potentially even ramping up aggression even further than you might see in, potential
that seems to make sense. Yeah.
Okay. So that's like another like big EV generator, the float flop there. So
Let's see. Passes versus miss c-bets. Okay, cool. I have that one. Okay, perfect.
cool. And then the next session, there's only a couple. We're going to look at some turn stats now. And then we don't really look at the river stats too much just because the sample size on these river stats gets really small.
Okay.
So, your c-bet turn looks pretty solid. I'm fine with that. Fold the turn float, fold the turn probe. Fold the turn c-bet. Can you hover? You see here this number, this 29. Can you hover over there? I want to see how many samples that is.
Okay.
Only 17, so it's not that many samples. But that number is obviously very low for fold the turn c-bet.
Okay.
But it's only 17 samples. So this is on the turn. This is why I don't even look at some of the river numbers.
Makes sense. Yeah,
they're gonna even be less. Yeah, we can go to the right a bit more and see. I might kind of.
A little bit more.
Yeah, probe turn looks pretty low. So turn probes betting versus miss bet out of position.
Yep.
Low.
Seems like an okay sample.
I put as like a kind of a medium thing, but probably definitely looking into like turn probe stats.
Okay.
For sure. And then we can look at a few of these rivers and see, but you can already tell when like it says 50% even or 100%.
It's like small sample, right?
Yeah, for sure. Scroll all the way to the right. There is a couple useful stats.
Okay.
All right, perfect. So here's a good one. All right, so this one right here, that's cut off. It is, yeah, there we go.
Oops.
It's the percentage of the time you win the pot after you bet river and get called.
Okay.
So this is one money, that's showdown percentage, when you bet the river and get called.
Okay.
Now, this stat isn't perfect, but another way to interpret this stat is how often you value bet on the river. Because you've bet and been called and you won the pot.
Okay.
And so when I see here on the button, you're winning the pot 73% of the time. I think that number is really high.
Okay.
And that could mean two things.
Okay.
One, potentially you're not bluffing enough. Number two, which I often see is more so the case, you're not value betting thin enough. And so often what you see is like people like can find bluffs like, oh, I can't win the pot, I'm gonna bluff, I have a low, that type of stuff is easier to identify, but a lot of people struggle with thin value bets potentially. So that could be something. And all those numbers, so around like 60%, 65% is like mathematically kind of, if you're betting a full pot on the river, if you make a pot size bet, you're laying your opponent 2-to-1 odds, so you should be value betting 67% of the time and bluffing 33% of the time.
Okay. Yep.
If you're betting like half pot, you're laying your opponent 3-to-1, so you should be bluffing. You should be bluffing 25% of the time, which is kind of what we're looking at here. Almost with these numbers is like you're losing the pot like 27% of the time ish. And so it could be a couple things where, like, one, maybe you're not betting large enough on the river. It could be that your bluff to value ratio could potentially be off. Again, it's river stuff. They're smaller sample sizes.
Yeah.
But it's hard to pin it down to something. But these numbers, if I'm playing and I have like a stat like this on my HUD, and I saw, like, if I'm in a close spot on the river and I see you have a 73% like with this number, I'm probably just going to choose to fold.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. I look at a different one, but I see if someone's winning too much at Showdown, then I interpret that similarly. But looking at this one, this is interesting too, to see that mine is this high. I think I probably, feels like it might be, even though I get greedy sometimes, feels like I might not be, probably a combination of both actually. Maybe there's some spots I'm missing, some bluffs. Yeah, that's probably, I feel like that's probably a little bit.
This is a stat that's like very helpful to see in terms of your overall game, but it makes it hard to, like, you can't pin it down to what specifically it is. So so that's kind of like a general kind of quick database review overview. I think we got a few kind of key points here to, like, the key things I would say would be, so I coach preflop stuff. And I have some, like, but like preflop work is grunt work, you know. It's just kind of, you just got to study it. It's not fun, it's not sexy, but it's the most important street poker. So, you know, we kind of talked about that. The big ones for like post flop stuff, the two big ones were like the C betting out of position.
Okay.
And I would say the float flop bets. So betting when you're in position, not being aggressive enough. Those are like kind of the two ones. Oh, and then the small blind, like fold to C bet from the small blind.
Okay, so these are big ones here.
And then I think we had your fold to C bet was too high in position. Yeah, so like folding the bets on the button too much. Folding to C bet in position too high. That would be like another one. So C betting out of position, float flops, and then folding to C bets too much, especially in position. So two of those are kind of pretty correlated, or they're kind of the same situation. You've flatted a raise in position, and you're not betting aggressive enough versus checks, and you're folding too much to bets.
Gotcha.
So two issues, but they're the same situation, which makes it pretty nice. And then you kind of have the opposite. The same situation, but from the opposite point of view, where you're the aggressor out of position. So potentially a pretty good spot to start to look at.
Okay, sweet.
Any questions from your end in terms of some of the database reviews?
I'm trying to think, because like right now as I'm hearing this stuff, I am trying to walk it backwards and think about what could be initiating it in my thought process. Do you get what I mean? I think I kind of, this calling too much in EP, I think I kind of narrowed that down. I think I'm just in a couple of spots where I'm thinking a little bit too much of having to 3-bet fold certain hands that I lean towards low frequency flatting. So I think I have an idea on this one. And then this C-bet out of position, not enough in EP. You talked about this. This was a cool one. This makes sense because I know I've very consciously slowed down some C-betting out of position. And then this
actually,
one...
let me clarify something there first. So the C-bet, the 60%, that's going to be versus the button. As the flatter gets like versus the low jack, maybe it's 40%. as the flatter's range gets stronger and stronger, your c-bet percentage will go lower and lower.
Okay, yeah. So
does that make sense?
Yep. C-bet goes lower versus. Okay. Yep. So that's good clarification for notes there. And too much in cutoff. Okay, because button's range is more condensed than ours. Ours is wider. Okay. And too passive versus miss c-bets in position. This one's interesting here. I wonder, because I'm thinking like, okay, somebody misses c-bet, I'm in position. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm wondering why I wouldn't be betting, because I don't think, like, off the top of my head that they're doing too much trapping, a lot of the time. So this one I'm very curious about. I'm gonna definitely be thinking and looking at that more. And then the folding c-bet too much in small blind. This is for sure like some out of position thing. Like I think I'm probably just not check raising enough. It feels like with my double back doors and whatnot, versus, because it does feel like the button is actually, population feels like button is c-betting, over c-betting probably. So I'm probably missing a lot of opportunities to check raise, right?
Check raising, yes, and then also just like probably not calling enough high card hands and calling with enough back doors.
Gotcha.
Are probably the two main areas that you're missing. Yeah, so if you had a choice now, would you rather filter for the spots where you will flat the button in position, heads up, or would you rather do more out of position stuff where you raised and you have a c-bet opportunity out of position? I think because we have two of the issues, if I had to give a recommendation, I'd say let's look at hands where you flat on the button.
Okay.
Because that was where one of the, we were saying your button win rate was kind of low.
Okay.
And so
yeah, let's do that.
Potentially where you flat call on the button, and we can kind of maybe catch both. Some spots maybe where you're facing a bet, and spots where you're facing that miss c-bet as well. Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's look at the button. How do you want this sorted here?
So you see where it's in the bottom left, it says quick filter?
Yep.
Go more filters.
Okay.
Go actions and opportunities. Pre-flop. Pre-flop calls.
Okay.
Just go called to bet. Add to filter. Go add filter. Go hand details. Let's go. What was I thinking? I want to do hand details. I want you to. Heads up pot. Go to number of players.
Number of players.
Seeing the flop, which is the second one, and just do between 2 and 2. So it's a heads up pot.
All right.
Click that on. Add to filter. And then let's filter for stack depth, just so we take out some odd stuff. Let's go add to filter.
Okay.
Pot size and stack depth. Pre-flop. And then let's just say we're big blinds between 20 and 100. Sure, that works. Like
effective here?
Big. Sure, that works. It's not going to make too much of a difference, yeah.
Okay. Right there, 20 to 100, you said?
Yeah, that works.
Add to filter?
Add filter. And then we're just going to look at the button, so we don't have to do that. Yeah, so save and apply.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can see now there's 130 instances, and you can just see the win rate on these button cold calls.
Yeah.
So let's go statistics.
Yeah, chat, we'll try to scroll through a little bit later and pick up some of your questions towards the end of the stream here. But I do see some of your questions there, and we will try to catch them there.
Yeah, I think people already see. I talked to people at the Poker Coaches. So we got 2 memberships for 1 month to give away later today at the end of the stream. So that will be, that's pretty cool.
Yep. So exclamation point giveaway in the chat for the keyword, everyone. At the end of the stream, we're going to give away 2 1-month premium memberships. So that's pretty cool. Thanks to Matt for that one.
poker.
Yeah, we're on the second part. Basically, Matt is displaying for you all here what a typical coaching session with him would look like. So the first part was we did the database review where we went over all my stats. He gave a little insight on them. And now we've found some points of focus. And now we're going to dig into some hands, right?
Perfect. So, we got the button highlighted.
Yep.
So just go to the bottom, select any of those hands, and just go right-click Replay All.
Okay.
Some of these hands will be interesting, some of the hands won't, and we're just going to kind of fire through them and talk through as we can.
Okay.
Can you go Options here and go Hide Known Hole Cards? So in the top right, click the Options button, and then, yeah, there you go. And this is, how is this versus the small line? And we might need to filter something else.
Okay. Do you want to go back to filters?
Yeah, see what this hand. So go ahead and just go through the hand here. Let's see. Oh, never mind. Okay, yeah. Gotcha. So let's just skip this hand because it's a squeeze spot. So
okay.
I do Control right arrow. This is the quick way to do it. There you go. So go to the next one. So we could filter down further so that we, take out some of these spots for like the small blind 3-bet and stuff. But
okay, we'll just skip through them.
This is what we want right here. This is good. This is fine.
Right here?
Yep.
Okay.
So obviously there's a limp, which is going to change ranges slightly, but this is the situation we want. You flatted a raise on the button, heads up pot.
Okay.
Okay.
And anything about the flat pre-flop, all good there? I guess you'll just tell.
I think it's close. I think folding pre-flop is an option.
Okay.
For sure. Versus 3.5x, it's probably, if you look, is a fold, but it's probably fine to flat, but it's really close pre-flop actually. You're probably not making much money at all flatting this.
Okay.
At this stack depth. These suited connectors really, like, their sweet spot is almost like 60 big blinds effective. Where when you get shallower than that, the playability goes down with them. And actually, like, a lot of people think these suited connectors are really good when you're deep stacked, like early on. So like these ACR tournaments with like 200 big blinds deep, these hands actually go down in value as well, because you end up getting like straight over straight and flush over flush, and it's really, really, really expensive now when that happens.
Gotcha.
So I would say the flat is fine. I don't really have a preference, but it's kind of, if you folded there, I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh. So obviously we're folding here. We go to the next one.
Yep. Oh man, I thought I was gonna do something gangster there for a second.
Yeah, we're at that 20% raise. Good.
All right, and then.
So why don't you walk me through what's kind of your thought process? Do you have like a structured thought process about how you handle this spot when you're facing a bet?
You know what? Looking at this hand, I'm not really sure. The first thing I might look at here is check their HUD stats and see if I have any information. So first thing I'm seeing here, 133 hands. Not huge, but they're 14, 11, 2, which seems pretty tight. Their C-bet is, again, small sample, but C-betting a bit. And then I notice also their one at showdown is really high. So I'm probably right now just kind of assuming they're quite nitty. And I might just give this up. But based on what you mentioned earlier, I'm probably, even though this was small blind related, I might not be calling enough high card hands. Maybe this might be a similar situation.
Okay. So for what I see here is we kind of need a structured thought process of how we organize how we defend versus bets.
Okay.
So first off, for me personally, any HUD stats or player reads or anything like that is the very last thing that I look at for me personally. So I go through my own process first, and I determine, and I use all that other stuff for close decisions.
Okay.
The reason I do that personally, and I play like a very theory-oriented game, but I make exploits a lot, all the time. But the reason I do everything else first is because I know my strategies. I know what my flatting range is here. I know all that information for a fact because I'm the one making the decision. I have no idea what this guy's strategy is. Now you look at his HUD, he's definitely on the tighter side, for sure. But we only have 4 hands on a C-bet spot. I know some people that will just c-bet here 100% of the time. I know some people that will c-bet here, 20% of the time. A lot of variance on that. So that's personally how I go about thinking about spots. I'm not saying that's right. That's not going long. But in terms of the kind of when I asked the process, the first thing that you went to was your HUD.
Yep.
Which I use my HUD for sure. But for me personally, it's the last thing I look at. That's something that might jive with you, might not. But
I dig it.
So in terms of sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I dig it. I think that makes sense because we're not going to have 133 hands on a good amount of villains at times. So using it as kind of a close decision decider, I think that makes sense.
Even here, you have 133, which is not like a small sample size to have on a villain, but you only have 4 c-bet spots on them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to get 20 c-bet spots on them or something, like it takes a lot of hands, especially now where we're talking out of position c-bet spots.
Yeah.
So, in terms of how I like to structure my thought process for defending versus a bet here, and it goes back to pre-flop. I need to know what my pre-flop range is in this spot. Okay, so I know from studying my pre-flop ranges here, the worst. I always like to focus on offsuit. It's most important to focus on what your offsuit hands are, because offsuit hands are going to make up the majority of your hands just because of combo metrics of there's 12 ways to be dealt an offsuit hand preflop, but only 4 ways to be dealt a suited hand.
Okay.
So when you look at a chart, it looks equal, right? But that left side of the chart of your offsuit hands is 3 times as many of your suited hands.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep, for sure.
Perfect. So I know from flattening the button, and if you look at your charts, the worst offsuit hands. Let me ask you here: what are the worst offsuit hands that you flat here on the button versus a cutoff open?
Jack 10 off.
Perfect. Yeah. So for me, I know it's offsuit 10s.
Okay.
So I'm continuing. Sometimes I 3-bet them, but I continue with every single offsuit Broadway hand.
Okay.
All right. And that's like a good place to start. On the suited side, I know I'm continuing with every single suited 8 or better.
Okay.
From studying pre-flop spots. That's how I study my pre-flop ranges. I think what's my worst offsuit hands that I always continue, and what are my worst suited hands that I always continue. And that's going to help set us up better for how we defend on the flop.
Nice. That's sick. I like that. That's cool.
So the first thing I do is we want to take into account the bet size. So step 1, after we've identified, I'm normally doing that pre-flop spot before the flop even comes out. So especially I know you play live a lot. When I'm playing live, I'm already considering that while the dealer's burning and bringing out the flop and stuff. I'm like, what's the situation here? Cutoff versus button. I'm on the button. What's my range? What does my range look like? Now, now we're facing a half pot bet.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the minimum defense frequency or MDF formula?
I've seen it, but I don't access it in my subconscious easily.
So facing a half pot bet here,
Mhm.
our fold percentage is should be no higher than 33%.
Mhm.
And how I get that is you take the bet divided by, so here it would be I do it as 0.33 divided by 1.33. Or so here it's, 0.5,
Mhm.
the bet, divided by 1.5, which is the pot. So the pot is 1, the bet is 0.5, they're betting 0.5, divided by 1, which is the pot, plus the bet, which is 1.5. So 1 over 1.5 over 1.5 is 1/3.
Yep.
So that gives us kind of our fold frequency. And at the most, we should probably be folding that much, probably even lower. So I would guess here, if I look this up in a solver, our fold percentage is somewhere around 25%.
Gotcha.
And why I do that first is, so what's the majority of our answer?
Of the offsuit combos?
Of just our entire range. If it's a majority of our response to this bet to fold or do something else.
No, we need to defend. Yeah, well, actually, I guess the majority of our response is to fold, right? We need to hit 33.
So here we're only going to, we need to defend 67% of the time here. So 2/3 of our range.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I actually said it should even be more of that. So more like 75% of the time.
Gotcha, okay.
And so the reason I do that in that way is to set myself up to know, hey, the majority of my answer has to be something other than fold, because I have to continue here 75% of the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because we're in position. If you want to be, because we're in position, it's going to be slightly more than the MDF number, but if you're doing the exact math here, it's going to be 67%. So something like 67, 70% of the number.
Okay.
Either way, you come to, like, I'm setting myself up to know a majority of my answer is not fold.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. And with the way you have it organized as well, you know what you're calling, and then to a half pot bet, you know how much of that range you need to continue with. So now you can pinpoint what area, like how you kind of organize it, right? Like, oh, okay, I need to hit this, so now I need to play like this part of my range here, right?
Perfect. Yep. So there's 3 ways. Now there's like a 3-step process that I go through.
Okay.
The first step is interaction. How much interaction do we have with this board? And when I say interaction, I'm talking about pairs and like straight draws, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll ask that right here. How much interaction do we have on this board? Jack, Jack, deuce.
I feel like we hit well, there's no straight draws, but I do feel like we have a bit of Jack X that would be flatting here.
Yep. So we have all the offsuit jacks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. But other than that, we basically have nothing, right? Other than our pocket pairs. So this is a very low interaction board. For example, if the board was Jack 10 9,
mm-hmm.
we have all the interaction in the world, right? Because we have all the offsuit 10s, we have all the offsuit jacks, all of our offsuit queens have straight draws, all of our suited 8s have open-ended straight draws, we have pairs, you know, we have everything to choose from, right?
Right, yep.
Here, we don't have a pair of deuces. We have 0 deuce X.
Mm-hmm.
We have very limited Jack X now because there's only there's 2 of them on the board. So the odds of us, like if this was Jack deuce deuce, we'd actually have more interaction because we have more combinations of Jack X now.
Okay.
But because it's Jack Jack deuce, we have way less combinations. So our interaction is really, really low.
Gotcha.
That's the first area you normally defend from is interaction. You very rarely ever fold pairs, straight draws, etc., unless you have so much of it that's going to allow you to fold. So see, you're taking notes. So like number 1 would be like, what's the bet size that I'm facing? It's always the first part of my process. Second is going to be how much interaction do I have on this board? And by interaction, talking about pairs and straight draws. And like a side note there would be how much interaction does my offsuit region have on this board?
Okay. Okay, cool.
Okay. So we kind of determined here that we don't have much offsuit interaction.
Yep.
Actually, I'm going to ask you a question first before we go in here. Just to start a baseline here. What do you think is the weakest hand we defend on this flop? And by say weakest, I'm not including anything with a like backdoor flush draw or something.
Oh, dang. Now I don't know what to
like,
say.
Or sorry, a front door flush draw. You can say backdoor flush draw.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind. The weakest hand is just backdoor flush draws. Yeah, weakest backdoor flush draws. I guess maybe backdoor straight draws.
Can you be more specific? What are some of the weakest? Like, give me some hand ranks.
Weakest.
Ace of heart combos, king of heart combos, queen of heart combos.
Queen. No, actually. Yeah, honestly, to be completely honest, I'm thinking in real time, especially if I'm multi-tabling, the worst is the queen highs. I have some 10x suited, but I for some reason right now I feel like I wouldn't be calling the 10x backdoors as much, which doesn't seem to make sense. But so
queen
yeah,
10 with the 10 of hearts is probably no chances folding here.
Right.
Maybe even like I think king queen. Like, what do you do with king queen of spades here?
I think I would call 2 overs backdoor straight draw.
King 10 of spades.
Yeah, king 10 of spades. Anything backdoor straight draw. I'll fold. I think I would fold king 9.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So All right, I just wanted to kind of get that for a baseline here.
Okay, yep.
So the second category, we talked about interaction. The second category is suit. Okay.
Okay.
So there's three categories of flops: rainbow, two-tone, and monotone flops.
Okay.
So obviously this is a two-tone flop. So what's different about so on a rainbow flop here,
Mm-hmm.
if this board was rainbow, we only have 3 combinations each of each backdoor flush draw. So for example here, we only have, if this was the jack of clubs or if the deuce of hearts was the deuce of diamonds,
Okay.
for example. If we have ace-3, we can only have ace-3 of diamonds, ace-3 of clubs, ace-3 of hearts. It's the only way we can have a backdoor flush draw. Okay. On a two-tone board, now we can have the ace of hearts in quite a different way. We have the nut backdoor flush draw in actually 7 different ways. Sorry, 8 different ways. So let's take a hand like ace queen. Let's just say we flatted ace queen always here.
Okay.
We can have ace queen of hearts, which is 1 flush draw. We can have ace queen of clubs, 2. We can also have ace of hearts with 3 different queens, so that's 5. And we can have the queen of hearts with the 3 different aces. So ace queen, 8 of our 16 combos have a backdoor flush draw.
Gotcha.
So our offsuit hands on two-tone boards have a lot more interaction because of the suits.
Neat. That's cool.
So what that does is it actually makes it easier for us to defend here, because we have ace queen, ace 10, king queen, king 10, queen 10. We have like a lot of our offsuit stuff has a lot of backdoor flush draws going on here.
I'm starting to see how we're gonna hit 75%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the next region is suit. The third region is the tough region, and that's high cards. So that's hands like we mentioned, king queen of spades, ace queen, ace high, king high, those type of hands. And so it's kind of a hierarchy. So the types of boards where you're gonna have to get to these. So this board here, how I would start to say is like, we have very low interaction. So we're gonna have to dig really hard into the backdoor flush draw hands.
Okay.
So it's two-tone, which helps us a lot. If this was rainbow,
Yeah.
we'd really be screwed because we don't have backdoor flush draws. I mean, we only have 3 combinations each.
Yeah.
Then we'd have to go to high cards, which is when it starts to get ugly.
Mhm.
Not as ugly on this board because ace high is a pretty strong hand here, but on different board textures like jack 6-4 rainbow, it can get pretty ugly calling with ace 9 offsuit, for example. So that's the structure of how whether I'm in the big blind, whether everything, that's how I defend versus bets and how I have like a structured mindset.
That's cool. I like that. That's nice to organize it that way. And I see now why, like 1,000,000%, the last thing you look at is the HUD stats, because there's just there's just so much other stuff to compartmentalize and kind of give us a roadmap and know pretty much exactly like even just versus a half pot here starting point, we know 67% we need to defend, and then depending on the size we just kind of adjust one way or the other, right?
Yep. 100%.
So
and like everything I mentioned is 100% concrete evidence or concrete information too. Like we know that information versus we're not kind of playing the guessing meta game, which is fine. But where that breaks down is really deep in really big buy-in tournaments.
Okay.
When emotions come into play.
Yeah.
And that's when you want to have a really structured mindset, because let's say you're in the Venom still and there's 25 left.
Yeah.
I would almost guarantee you your emotional side of the decision-making process is going to break down completely. Mine would too. That's everyone's is going to break down. So that's why it's really important to have this kind of structured framework that you can fall back on.
Makes sense. I love it.
What do you think about this hand? Ace 3 of spades here.
So this one, based on what we're talking about, we do have the backdoor wheel draw, high card value as well, and we don't block any flush draws. So I would imagine this is probably a continue.
So I would pure fold this hand.
Okay.
The reason I would pure fold is because we have all these ace tens with a heart. We have a lot of other better hands in terms of like, I'd rather defend queen 10 with the 10 of hearts than ace 3 of spades here.
Okay.
If this was a 1/3 side, if this was a 1/3 pot bet and it was a rainbow flop, I think it would get close.
Okay.
But because it's a two-tone flop and it's a half pot bet, we don't have to dig into these high card hands as much.
Okay.
Now do you see how I'm using that kind of process now to kind of eliminate? I don't have to defend. I can be a lot more picky with my high card hands because of the suits of the board, and as well as the bet size.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really cool. That makes sense. Okay.
Cool.
Nice. That was cool. That was a really cool discussion on that one. Oh, was there anything else? I'm sorry on that one.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so we want to skip that because of the squeeze. Skip the squeeze.
Can filter out these squeezes.
What is this? A jam? 41 blinds. That's funny. Okay, here we go.
Perfect.
So we flat button. Yep, go ahead.
We're against the hijack. So yeah, let's have you walk through this one. So kind of walking through that process.
Okay.
That framework. Obviously, like, I'm not saying copy my framework.
Right.
You're going to make adjustments to what works for you.
Right, but, for sure.
You know, let's experiment here with kind of a new framework of how we're going to structure here. Let's assume Lake B bets a third pot here.
Okay.
And start to think about what some of the weakest hands that we have to continue with on this board versus a third pot bet.
Okay, so the easiest stuff to think about what we're defending versus a third pot is outside of, I guess, when we connect, like 10x, obviously, right?
Yeah. So interaction here. I would note here, we're against a hijack now,
right?
And so we probably lose a lot of our jack 10 off, queen 10 off type of hands. We probably lose some interaction on this board because we're gonna have a tighter calling range here, versus the hijack. So like, that would be that's like kind of the first thing that I'm starting to think about here with this interaction. You know, what's the weakest? How do my offsuit hands connect in terms of having pairs here?
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I think that's there's offsuit hands. Okay, yeah. So our offsuit hands here. I feel like, yeah, so less Jack 10 offsuit. I don't know if did we see, am I calling too much on the button? I'm not calling enough on the button, right?
I think it was like 12%, probably fine. Like versus the button, you should probably be calling about 15%, something like that. And then a little bit less, like you can probably flat more, especially too, like I mentioned, like if people are min raising, you should be flatting a lot more.
Okay.
I think people will do a really, really poor job of adjusting their ranges based off bet sizing.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
So
yeah.
Like my range would get widened quite a bit here. Like I would have Jack 10 off here and Queen 10 off here because it was a min raise, but I wouldn't versus like a 2.3x or something.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, worst hands that I'm calling, I would think that I'm calling this, with the backdoor draws, and then I don't have any like 7, 8, 8, 9. I mean, suited, but how deep are we? Yeah. Even though I think we're 3-betting the like 8, 9 suited a bit, but I guess this is probably outside of some other high card hands like the ace, jack, not folding, the offsuit, king, jack, obvious, easy, continue. But I guess, I don't know, the worst hand I'm probably continuing here, maybe that I'm flatting the button. I don't have like ace 8 offsuit. So it's kind of like ace jack offsuit and then suited with double backdoors.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here.
Yeah.
What are you doing with ace 3 of spades?
Ace 3 of spades. I would think that I'm continuing, even though I I don't know if because I know I was doing some raising on the button. Maybe I raised that because I've been doing some stuff where like I would raise flop. Maybe that's when you said that I had like a really aggressive stat line there, like raise flop so that I had the decision on the turn. Depending on stack depth, if I didn't want to face a double barrel, I might sometimes raise flop so that I could see the river essentially.
Okay. Yeah, I think ace-3 of spades is really close. I'd raise it more so. The reason it's close is because we have a dangler. So I really like to start to think of like the interaction part's easy. Like we're not folding king jack here. We're not folding queen jack. We're not folding 7-8. You know, that type of stuff is easy.
Right.
How I literally like to start about my suited stuff is suited aces. Do I fold? I literally go by rank here.
Okay.
Do I fold any ace high flush draws? And I said ace-3 because I think ace-3 and ace-deuce are close. But I think ace-5 suited, and mostly because the 5, you have 2 overcards to a pair of 4s. You can improve against ace-4, for example.
Gotcha.
And I'm just pulling it up. I pulled up a sim here, and I'm looking right now. Ace-3 and ace-deuce are like mixing folds. And actually here, ace-5 mostly continues. Ace-6 is a pure fold. And ace-7 is a majority fold on the flop here.
Oh, interesting.
And what's going on here, why we're folding these ace-high flush draws, is because of all that interaction we have on the flop here. So all our offsuit hands actually have, you know, we have queen jack off, king jack off, king queen off, which are obviously very strong straight draws here. We have a little bit of jack 10, queen 10, king 10, and then obviously ace 10, which is a pair. Even ace jack offsuit and ace queen offsuit are mixing folds here.
Oh, interesting.
Everything else I'm going to mention here, I'm just looking at ranges. We have 8-7 suited, 8-6 suited, 7-6 suited. All those are straight draws. 6-5 suited is folding, which is like, obviously we have 3 to a straight. Like I might over continue that hand. Like you're starting to see here, because our interaction is so high on this board.
Yeah.
We got to be pretty selective now. So this is a flop actually where it's tougher not to continue too much almost.
Gotcha. Okay, and that goes back.
So like I literally go down here like ace high suits, and then like what about king high flush draws? Well, the better ones aren't interesting because we know we're continuing those, but like king 8, king 7, king 6, king 5, like, you know, like looking here, like king 5, king 6, king 7, and like king 8 suited is kind of like the worst king high backdoor flush draw that we're continuing with here.
King 8 suited, you said, right?
Yeah, because we have the 3 to the straight to go with it, and then everything else, like queen highs, all our queen high backdoor flush draws have straight draws. Everything else is there. So like versus a third pot bet here, our fold percentage in the solver is 16%. And that's 16% where we're folding hands as strong as ace-6 suited and ace-7 suited here.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, so that definitely speaks to what our range looks like and how what you said interacts with this board.
Exactly. So it's like what I'm looking here at is, and when I study, obviously you guys can't see the solve. I have it up on my computer, my screen here, because I wanted to check my work because I thought ace-3 suited was close, and it was, but like ace-6 suited is not close. Ace-5 suited is even mixing folds. The important thing here is like I'm not trying to copy the solver. What I'm starting to the key thing with this hand is to recognize, hey, we flatted the button this 10-9, jack 10, you know, even probably 9-8. The connectivity is so well with our offsuit portion of our range and our suited portion that we got to be very, very selective, and we actually have to be careful about not defending too much here.
Gotcha.
And you can probably find out here that intuitively, because we fold so little, like a small bet size out of position is actually not a great strategy here, just because we don't have to fold that much.
Right. On this, I would imagine then, considering what you just said, a small bet size strategy out of position for this player here, due to our interaction and how much we're not folding, it's almost then like this player here should be checking quite a bit on the 10 high, jack high flops, right?
Yeah, I mean it hits their range too, I guess. They still get a bet because the bottom of their range is like offsuit 10s. It's kind of a board where there's both players just kind of smash it in a way. Both players have so much interaction here.
Yeah.
So This is kind of a good example of where, like, I personally, I would have over defended on this flop, and I probably am over defending on this flop with hands like ace jack and
Yeah.
ace queen.
Yeah.
And once you kind of learn these defending spots, you learn how to use that to improve your out of position play when you're the aggressor. You start to realize, well, I'm going to bet more on this board because I know people are overfolding because I know what's required of when I bet this small size, what they have to call with.
Yeah.
You know, you start to learn it that way. And so this will really help with other parts of the game as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, let's go through one more here.
Okay. So they checked. Is this
Actually, this is a good one to look at versus bet versus misbet.
because this was a thing we had on the notes, right?
Yep. So
Yep. Two passive versus miss C bets in position. Okay.
when you're betting in position, do you want to be more polarized or more linear with your bets in comparison to when you're betting out of position?
In position, I'm thinking more polarized.
Perfect. Why? That's the hard question now. Why do you
Well,
want to be more polarized when you're betting?
well, I'm just thinking that when we kind of like, I want to bet my strongest stuff, and then all my other stuff that I don't really care to, like, I guess, get to showdown, or I don't have like any sort of value in checking it.
Yeah. So it all has to do with the option of check. And when you're in position, the option of check is a really good option, no matter your hand, because you have a chance to see the next card and improve your hand.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of like why you 3-bet a very polarized range from the big blind, because calling is such a great option that you want to take advantage of that option as much as possible, which is why you kind of 3-bet more polarized there, versus from the small blind, calling isn't as great of an option, which is why you often 3-bet more linear from the small blind.
Okay.
Okay. So how often are you betting a hand here like King 5 of diamonds?
Versus a check, to be honest, I would hope a lot, because just simply put, I feel like there's not too much value in checking it.
Perfect. So the EV of checking that hand is pretty low, right?
Yeah.
I'd probably just pure bet with King 5 of diamonds, King 6 of diamonds, King 7 of diamonds, those types of hands.
Okay.
Once you get to a hand like this hand, it gets closer, because the EV of checking this hand is pretty strong, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good turn cards. And the opportunity cost of betting here is you are risking getting check raised potentially here, which is not good at all. And I don't think it takes rocket science to figure out that it's not good to be check raised with this hand.
Right.
So a lot of times where like people are missing their betting percentages, they're just not betting very polarized here. And like with the King 5 of diamonds, it's like they're going to check call with a pair of 9s, pair of 8s, pair of 7s, that type of stuff. You're just also going to get, you have 3 clean outs most of the time. And so finding those really polarized bets here, especially with hands like 7-5 suited, 6-5 suited, that have like 3 card straights here, hands like that, very high frequency bets here normally.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So I wouldn't always bet this hand. I think I would bet it sometimes for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not like a go hand for me, like here, where it would be like with, one of those like King high diamond hands, or maybe like ace 5 of diamonds, something like that. Those are the types of hands I tend to bet more often here.
So that's interesting then, because I'm trying to reorganize a little bit up here, and the way that you're getting to betting some hands is based off of the value of just betting polar, right? And those hands just don't have too much value in checking back. Whereas thinking about the you said like the ace 5 of diamonds, right? like betting, I'm thinking potentially about betting ace five of diamonds, because when they check here, they're gonna have some better ace high stuff. So I need to start betting to get that to fold. Like that's kind of how I think I've organized in a very simple way my thought process.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty like good way. A really good way to think about it is kind of similar to how I think about like what ace high draws do I continue, what king high draws. And a good way to think about betting here is, so what are my worst suited aces here?
The ones with no backdoor draws.
So not even that, like what do I call with? Do I call with all suited aces pre-flop, or do I fold some?
I think we're calling all of our suited aces on the button here.
Perfect. So we're probably just going to bet with our worst ones. So like ace deuce, ace three, maybe ace five.
Yeah.
What about suited kings? What's our worst suited king that we flat pre-flop?
King six, king five, I guess.
So like I have a chart up here looking at like king five.
Okay.
What hands does this all bet? King five, king six, king seven, king eight. Betting our worst ones. What are our worst queen X hands? Like queen eight, jack eight. We're kind of like just betting our worst stuff there. Obviously, our offsuit tens have pairs. Like sometimes we bet with the 10x. We still check back some like jack 10, queen 10 hands. We can bet a lot of hands like queen jack and king jack, because those hands can like call check raises without a problem. So we're not worried about being check raised with queen jack or king queen. Sometimes we check those hands, but yeah, like thinking about really like betting, what are my worst aces? What are my worst kings? What are my worst queens? And kind of working backwards that way.
I like that.
It's kind of a good way to start.
I like that a lot.
And like here, like I'm seeing the solver, like I might have not come to this right answer. Like ace jack is actually bet here a ton. And I probably don't bet ace jack here enough.
Yeah, I wouldn't think I do either.
The reason ace jack's betting is we flat ace 10. That's a pair. We do a little bit of flatting with ace 9. That's a pair. Like ace jack is our worst offsuit ace. It's not a pair here. And betting that type of hand gives us some pretty good board coverage on the ace when we bet, because we don't bet a ton of ace highs here. So that's like a good reason to have
like that
there.
Yeah.
But like, king jack here bets more than king queen. It's just kind of a reverse hierarchy, almost way of thinking.
Interesting. Let's see. I guess we are running. What time do we start? About 9:30. So we're running close on time here. Do you want to? How do you want to progress from here?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. We can go a few more minutes. It's up to you, really. I got nothing else the rest of the night. So if you want to cut it off here soon, and we can kind of go into a wrap up, that's fine with me. If you want to go through a couple more hands, that's fine with me. I'm enjoying this. It's up to you.
All right, let's do. Let's see. Let's do at least. I mean, since we're here, we're chilling. We'll do another hand or two. See how long it takes. How deep are we?
Seems fine. 40.
Oops.
I would pure call here. I don't want to 3-bet. I would 3-bet more like king 8 suited, maybe king 9. I don't want to 3-bet fold this type of a hand.
Okay.
And I don't want to 3-bet call. So this would be perfect. So
we got a third. I imagine. So now trying to adopt a little bit from what you're saying here. Our button flats, which, okay, this is actually cool. Continuing to think about this, because we kind of already have. Is this a similar stack depth to what we had before, maybe in the first one? But we kind of have an idea what our range looks like here, right? We don't have like 7-8 offsuit, but we have a bunch of 10x, queen jack, a lot of stuff that continues, right?
Yeah, I would basically just shortcut here to our Broadway smash this board. Where every Broadway has something, right?
Yeah.
High interaction board.
Yep. So high interaction board.
That helps us.
Yep.
So we can be a little more selective now with probably some of our backdoor flush draw hands.
Got you. Okay. I see that.
So like, probably now, because all our backdoor flush draw hands are going to have like a dangler. It's going to be pretty. I'm actually curious if like king 7 suited. I don't even know if we're continuing that. Be interesting to see.
Queen 7 suited, you said?
I said king 7.
Oh, king 7 suited. Okay, yeah.
King 8's probably in there because it has 3 to a straight.
Yep.
Either as a raise, like that'd probably be a hand that seems like a reasonable raise here on the flop with king 8 maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's gonna be like a lot of our backdoor flush draws have danglers here. So I'm gonna pull this up really quick because I'm actually interested to see myself how weak we need to defend on this board with some of these backdoors.
Chat, just a heads up here. We're going to do a couple more hands with Matt, but make sure that you type ! giveaway in the chat. We're going to be giving away 2 free premium memberships, 1-month memberships to pokercoaching.com. We're going to be pulling those winners at the end of the stream.
Yeah. And while this is taking a second to load, like, I hope the chat's finding this interesting. I know some of this stuff can get dry a little bit. Like, this is how poker's going, in my opinion. And, like, poker's progressing very, very fast. And if you're not using tools, if you're not using software, like, I'm not talking about, like, there's so much, like, there's Poker Tracker, there's PO Solver, there's all this different information out there that can help with studying. And, like, depending on what your goals are with poker, like, it's there, you know, poker is progressing very, very fast. And, like, this is kind of maybe hopefully like a mindset into someone, like, I've been doing this for 15 years, like the last 2 years, like, this has been like a huge part of, like, this is how I study, essentially. This is how I code. And it's a very kind of technical framework, kind of how I study in this way. So
yeah,
kind of interested to hear kind of what the feedback is from the chat in terms of this, like, paint drying. Is this like, you know?
Chat seems, from what I've been looking at chat. What's up there, everyone? Thanks for hanging out with us. But from what I'm seeing from chat, like, everyone's like, yo, this is gold. Great Bluff says very helpful. Mr. Good Deed says amazing. We got thanks for streaming this. And everyone seems really enjoying it. But I definitely feel where you're coming from. Sometimes, especially with some newer players or more casual players, kind of hearing, there was one part when we were talking about minimum defense frequency earlier, pot odds, and you were explaining how to get to the 33% that somebody had said, oh wow, this is like too much. But I can understand with the math, that doesn't come very second nature to me, but the majority of everyone is really connecting with it. But sometimes it's tough because it can get quite complicated, and for myself included, even, like, I'm having to really, like, reorganize some things in order to, like, take the nuggets out of what you're saying, because there's some really amazing stuff that you're giving away. But I think chat's mostly connecting with this a lot. Interesting beyond belief, says Chip Scar.
Yeah. Yeah, and the math part, it sounds confusing, and it's probably confusing. Like, if I was sharing my screen, I'd, like, type up the formula and, like, show. I can show it a little better. Obviously, hearing audio wise, at least for me, like, if someone tries to give me an audio hand history, like, they try to tell it to me, like, I just lose it halfway through. I can't follow it. I'm a visual person. I have to see it.
Yeah.
But, like, with the MDF stuff, it's literally just memorization. I know what my MDF is versus pot, 2/3, half, 1/3. You know, there's like 4 or 5 of them, and like, once you memorize those, then you can just, you don't have to be exact. It's a ballpark thing, you know. I'm not trying to be exact here. Like, yeah, I don't know what 80%. I can't tell you what the 80% MDF is off the top of my head, but I know with pot it's 50%, and I know with 60%, if they bet 2/3 pot, it's 40%. So it's probably like 45% right in the middle.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I actually pulled it up here, and we actually, like, the defending strategy is really easy on this board. Even king 8 suited is folding. And so this is another one of those boards of just recognizing our offsuit broadways just smash here. And whenever that's the case, we get to be very, very selective here.
Okay.
So,
oh, that's a good note. I want to make a note here.
Yeah, so it's like a lot of these people, like, they try to put people into these boxes, like everyone overfolds flops or everyone underfolds flops. And I really try to avoid that, because there's certain flops people severely overfold. There's also certain flops where people severely underfold and they defend way too wide. And that's also a mistake. And so learning that are like, now I'm like sizing up on those boards where I know people defend way too much. You know,
Yeah.
I'm using that to my advantage. So like on a board texture like this, like I might size up with a hand like ace queen because I know they're going to defend with way too much, like maybe like, you know, king high backdoor flush draw or something like that. Or maybe they're going to call with too many pocket fives, for example, which is like just folding the flop here.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually. I really like...
If I size small, I'm going to start barreling the turn more because their range is too weak when they get to the turn. So it's like kind of a snowball effect.
That's really cool. And you can just even see that from just like studying our strategy on this side, like you said earlier. So that's really neat.
Yeah.
Sweet. So now you got me thinking. They bet here. Maybe they're just over c-betting, but they bet, and then this card also smashes our range.
What do you think the cutoff strategy is here on the turn for the hijacks?
I would imagine it's a lot of checking.
Yeah, it might even be a range check.
Yeah.
And basically, how I'm shortcutting, I don't know if it's going to be an actual range check, but in general, when you're out of position and the in-position player can have all the offsuit combos of the nuts, it's probably a good signal that you need to
Yeah.
you need to be very, very careful.
That makes sense.
Like, I actually want to see here. They bet small, call, we get the jack. Like their range is probably literally just king queen that bets, and king queen's going to want to check a lot. Yeah, they have a 80% check here.
Okay, super high. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because our range smashes this board. We're going to have king queen here probably like 10-15% of the time right now, you know? Like, and if that's the case, like you really can't start betting ace queen for value, ace king for value here.
Yeah, I just gotta... Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's cool. I wonder, so our continues consider... Oh, okay, so now it's really cool. We can just organize this. Our continues here...
Yeah, so what happened to our continuing range now?
It's tight, but it
improved, right?
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
That should be a signal here that because a lot of our weakest continues, like queen jack, king jack, you know, jack 8, all those types of hands, 8-7, that should be a signal now that we need to start bluffing with some pretty, like, what do you think is the strongest hand we probably have to start bluffing here with?
Strongest hand, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's
like,
see.
Easy hands are like, I'm not gonna say like, you know, if you had like king 8 suited, like obviously that's a pretty easy hand to bluff with here.
Right.
That's not enough.
Right. So I guess we need to start bluffing. Did you say our strongest hand or our weakest hand?
Strongest hand. Like what's like what I'm getting at here is we have to bluff with some pretty strong hands that are unnatural bluffs here because of how strong our range is here now.
Gotcha. And the way that they have to play, they're like ace, queen, ace, king now, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I guess we're bluffing some of our the majority of our ace-x suited stuff.
I would say ace-x is probably not, but where I was going is like 9-8 suited, 9-7 suited, maybe queen 10 or king 10. Probably should start trying to bluff off pocket queens, pocket kings, maybe a weak ace x, like a weak ace by the river.
Gotcha.
And it's because we don't have anything else to bluff with.
Yeah.
And this is a spot where it's like very easy to underbluff.
Gotcha. Interesting. That's really cool.
What do you think about bet sizing here?
I'm thinking, let's see, what's stacked up? 33. Okay, so now tell me what you think about the way I think I typically organize this. I have the nuts, trying to get value, and I would probably be putting a bit of emphasis on trying to get it in by the river.
Good.
So that would have me at, let's see, if I do 7, it's 14, 24, and they would be, it's, man, I'd almost have to go like 8 or 9 almost pot here to get it all in the river. Probably about
So
8.
How familiar are you with geometric sizing? That's what you're trying to work
Yeah,
out.
that's what I'm trying to hit.
Okay. So
Yeah.
an easy way to think about geometric sizing is at a 4-to-1 SPR. Geometric sizing is pot.
Okay.
Okay. So here the pot's 10.
Yeah.
If he had 40 big blinds, you would just, that's pot would be
Yeah.
your bet. Here he has slightly less, so that's how you're getting to that 8 or 9 big blinds.
Yeah.
But that way, that trick I kind of, gave you is a much quicker, easier way to do it.
Gotcha.
If it was a 2-to-1 SPR, somewhere around like 2/3 pot, something like that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, you want to be betting big here, like 9 big blinds. Also too, you don't want to bet ace-7 here. You're betting pretty polarized here, which is going to lead to, you want to use that big geometric sizing.
Gotcha. Okay. Nice. Makes sense. So we went a little small.
It's a little small. I'd go bigger, but
okay. Yeah, because
like to also I might even size it up even slightly higher than geometric because people tend to overfold rivers, and
ooh, I like that.
Like they're never going to fold ace queen here on the turn or ace king on the turn.
Right.
But they might fold when you jam the river. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. Yeah, because now this is like, it's just, I wonder what I did here.
Yep. So now what?
How does this 10 change? They're probably don't have too much 10x. I'm wondering like if we would continue like that kind of scary-ish card where we probably, as played, still have more. We probably have more 10x when they see bet and we just call, right? Like, is this
like this bet? Like, I think my only bet size here would be all in. Probably.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't hate it. This is probably the worst end of I don't hate it, but I'd probably just. I'd still probably bet bigger if I'm not going to shove like still like 16 or something because it's just a math problem, right? So when you bet half pot here,
yeah,
they need to fold 33%, meaning you have to be winning against 67% of their range, which that's why I'm like, don't really like this sizing because I think you're just doing way too well against that range. Like I think you can bet larger and still be doing just fine here with the straight. Like I think people are going to call with like ace of clubs queen, ace of clubs king, ace jack, ace 9. It's pretty easy to have like a pretty good bluff catcher on this board.
Gotcha.
Spot, they're probably going to call too much. Obviously they can have ace 10, they can have jack 10, 10 9. Like they can have some full houses, aces and jacks, but aces and jacks probably do something on the turn or there. So interesting spot on the river.
Okay.
I don't hate it, but I'd probably go a little bit larger.
Gotcha. All right. Cool. That was fun. That was we had some strong stuff in that one.
Yeah, that was a good hand for sure.
All right. Let's take a look at one more, and then
one more quick one. Sure.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time, though. I know the community is like loving this. This is I am too.
Yeah, I really like regained my. I didn't really coach after the World Series. I kind of took a break from it for like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And then like I picked it up. Like I did a lot of coaching this month, and I've kind of gotten back into like. I love it again. And
nice.
It's I like I mentioned, like I get a lot out of it. Like this is almost like study time for me too.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And especially too because it forces me to really hone in on my fundamentals and really be able to break stuff down in applicable ways, and that helps with my understanding of topics.
Nice.
And
I like that.
So like as I look back in time of when I was playing my best and doing my best, it was always times when I was doing high volume of coaching.
Interesting, but makes sense. I see that. That's cool because you're just like studying a bunch and you kind of just have to be sharp, right?
Yep. Yep. C flat seems good. So if they had bet here, we don't need to go through the whole process here for the sakes of time.
Yep.
But you should immediately get to the point here of you have to defend with some pretty ugly stuff here.
yeah.
You have no interaction. It's a rainbow flop. And so stuff like king jack offsuit, probably a call here. You know, king queen, ace jack. Like your only folds here are probably your worst offsuit hands. So your worst offsuit hands, like that's how you need a shortcut here. So like the easy shortcut here is if he bets 1/3, what's your worst offsuit ace that you flat here?
Offsuit ace 7. Ace 8?
Probably too weak there. Probably should be like ace 10, maybe
Ace
ace 9.
10?
I
Oh,
didn't. If
okay.
it's been raised like ace 9, ace 10, like
Okay.
that's probably a fold. Worst offsuit king, probably like king 10,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Fold. Queen jack off, fold. And then you fold like queen jack of hearts, jack 8 of hearts, some of those like your worst suited hearts. That's all you're folding. Like that's the like it's easier to work backwards that way. And then you can kind of figure out what hands you want to raise, what hands you want to call, like later on. I don't worry about that as much at the beginning. I think it's more important to figure out what hands you fold and what hands you call, because often the EV is close between raise and call.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think checking the flop is fine. I'd probably bet this hand a decent amount. So this is the board I'd get really aggressive on once they check.
Okay.
And the reason is for the exact thing we've done for the last 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
This is a board that's very easy to overfold, right? Because they have low interaction. It's rainbow. And so they have to defend some pretty ugly stuff here, right?
Yeah.
So this is a board, like, I'm going to go crazy with my float bets here. Because they're just going to, like, it's really hard to struggle. And they're actually, like, the correct strategy here from the hijack is actually to check a ton. To us. We're supposed to bet a lot, and then they're supposed to check raise here like 25% of the time.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 30% of the time. And almost no one is doing that. And it makes sense because they don't want to bet much because we just call. That sucks for them.
Yeah.
If they have ace queen, like that sucks. Like, all right, what are you gonna do now? Like, we're gonna put them in. We're gonna put like they got 3 streets to play here. So that's number 1. Number 2, we get a bet with a lot of weak stuff, so they should be check raising here with like pocket 8s, pocket 9s, 10s, you know. They should be check raising like jack 10 of clubs here, queen jack of diamonds, you know, king 6 of diamonds with like a 3 to like they should be playing like a very heavy like check raise strategy here.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. And so that's like another reason I would just jack up the frequency here. So they checked the turn here. What are your thoughts here on the so now you just start to bet.
In game, it's probably quite simple. Just they've double checked, so they just are gonna have like ace highs and king highs a bunch. So I need to start betting those hands, or betting a hand like this to get the ace highs, king highs, queen highs to fold.
So I hope this is. I'm gonna walk back a really quick here.
Okay.
About how we actually need to be. So I said I would ramp up the aggression here because I don't think people defend enough. That also we need to be careful on this end. So this is a board where if I'm the hijack here, I bluff catch so wide here. And the reason is, did the 8 improve any of the problems you already had on the flop in terms of your interaction suit high card?
No.
So you still have the same problems here.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to overbluff here. So it's kind of a catch-2. You want to be like acknowledge that you are overbluffing.
Yep.
And like when you're out of position here, you want to acknowledge like I'm gonna bluff catch really wide here because it's so easy to be bluffing every jack 10, every queen jack, every king jack, every king 10.
Interesting. That's cool. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. 100%. And like we're seeing it happen.
Yep. I don't mind this bet either. I think your bet's like fine, but just being aware of what you're doing. That even though it went check here, and so like the same thing here, like the cutoff, the hijack strategy again, when you check here is another, they should be checking like 60-70% again and be playing that same check raise strategy here. And the reason is because the same problems they had, that all their range is wide and all their jack 10s, queen 10s, king 10s, ace 9 offs, ace 7 offs, all those hands miss. It's still the problem here on the turn. That's why they check the flop a lot.
Yeah.
And so they need to like do the same thing here on the turn. They're probably going to be checking a lot again.
Yeah.
So I would actually be double checking a lot with hands like kings and queens and 9s and ace, you know, ace queen and stuff like that, like here, because it's easy to go too crazy here in position.
Gotcha.
So I know I kind of caught both ends of that, but it's just, you know, being aware of what's going on.
Right. That's really cool. No, that makes sense. I dig it. And we get goes there. But yeah. So I have honestly, we've been live for 2 hours here. This has been just like so informative. I got a bunch of really good notes here that I'm gonna look over, and I want to kind of bury a bit more into my subconscious. And it was really cool to see just kind of how you start your thinking versus how I'm starting my thinking. So I definitely have a lot to digest here. But chat, do you have any, before we let Matt go, do you have any questions or anything you would like to say to Matt while he's here hanging out with us? How can we get a one-on-one session with Matt, says Money Shredder. So is the best way, Matt, to go to your website?
Yeah, so you can either go to my website, mattaffleck.com. There's a contact page. You can email me there. Or on pokercoaching.com, there is somewhere in the tools section, I think it is like there's a link for private coaching, and you can select the different poker coaching coaches, and you can find me there and contact me there, where I get a contact email through poker coaching as well. So either of those. You know, I coach 2 days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, like Mondays and Wednesdays typically. My schedule kind of changes depending on what online tournament series or live tournament series are going on. But yeah, I'm still like, this is a good, like a good 90-minute session would look like. I think we went a little bit longer, obviously with the stream and everything. Like, we did a few extra hands and stuff. This is kind of what a 90-minute session tends to look like. So if you're interested in like one-on-ones, shoot me an email and I can get you information on that. Yeah, so that would be the best way there. And like the people, I'll throw this out there. One-on-one coaching is really good for, I would say, like intermediate to people that are starting to like really wanting to get a little bit more in the weeds. I don't think one-on-one coaching is good for people trying to learn the basics or beginners. I think sites like pokercoaching.com, where you can pay like a lower rate and you're going to get a lot more volume of contact that are all going to teach you the fundamentals. Like, that's the best way to go about it. Build up your fundamentals, get a lot of volume and experience it. Then that's, after all that's accomplished, that's kind of when a one-on-one coaching can be really beneficial.
That makes sense. I think that answers one of the other questions out there. How much of this type of thinking works for micros? Do you think that kind of...
It all works the exact same for micros.
Works the exact same?
One of my favorite things is like, all right, you want to put me in $1 tournaments on ACR and see what ROI I crush them for? Like, it's like a lot of the whole, the concepts you see of people like, well, these things don't work at my stakes. All the concepts are the same. I'm going to make adjustments for sure. But these are fundamental, like, principles, almost, in a way. Like, these are frameworks that are going to help build yourself. So when you move up in stakes, like, it's going to, like, help, like, organizing your thoughts. That's a better way of putting it, potentially. Yeah. Having a structured thought process. And I mentioned it before, Drew, like, your emotions were probably going pretty high when you were deep in the main, right?
For sure.
And if you're facing a river bet, for a pot-sized bet on the river, like, I see this all the time. Like, people, like, and I'm not saying you did this, but you tell me if you did this. Like, they sit there and they go, this sucks. This sucks. I don't know what to do. This sucks. Rather than, okay, what's the bet size?
Yeah.
What does my range look like? What's their value range? What's their bluffing range? What's, how does my hand interact with that? Is my hand a good candidate to bluff catch with? You know, where am I in my range? Having these structured frameworks is really important for when you get into these high pressure spots that are going to make or break your entire year.
Yeah.
Because sitting there and say this sucks is not going to help you get to the right answer.
You know, it's funny.
And I've been there before, and I've sat there and like, it's like, that's a big thing when I'm deep in tournaments. Like, I'll do that maybe for a second, like, please don't shove. Then they shove, like, oh shit. What's the bet? So what's their value range here? Okay, my hand's a bluff catcher. Is this player capable of bluffing? Like, that's a completely different framework than this out of position. But like, having these frameworks is how I structure everything in my thought process.
It makes sense. Yeah.
It's the best way I had it described with, I've done work with Jared Tendler in the past. And He described it as Tiger Woods has his golf swing.
Mm-hmm.
That's his framework. He has his swing. Poker players, we don't have a swing. We have our decision-making process.
Yeah.
And you see it in golfers. Like, I'm a big like PGA Tour golfer, and like Sunday when they're playing in a major, some of them choke under pressure. Their swings break down. They hit a bad shot. That's their frameworks breaking down under pressure because they're like, it's really tough. And the best golfers are the ones that have the strongest frameworks where they don't break down under pressure.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in poker, except instead of a golf swing, it's your decision-making process.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. There was kind of a less serious question. Do you still think about the bad beat from Duhamel?
Not really.
Yeah. Let's see. Yes, this will be available for replay. It'll be in my VODs, so you could check that out. Jay Pena says, tell Matt he did wonders for me through poker coaching, and I'm very thankful. He's made quite a few comments throughout the course of this stream. Like,
yeah, I remember I've seen him in webinars and stuff in the past, so thank you very much. I appreciate that. So yeah, for poker coaching, I do a weekly 1 hour, 60 to 90 minute live seminar. So it's normally on a topic of my choice, and yeah, we kind of dig into the weeds for 60 to 90 minutes. So I do the premium content. I'm one of the premium coaches, so it's more advanced topics where we're often tackling situations like, picking a spot. Like lately we've been doing big blind 3-bet pots, so 3-betting big blind versus button out of position. Small blind 3-bet pots, like that's kind of what we've been digging in lately, is like 3-bet pots out of position. But it's kind of a I have freedom to choose the topic, so it's kind of what I'm working on at the moment. And so normally for like 60 to 90 minutes, I'm kind of teaching those topics, and we're digging into the weeds there and have some fun.
Nice. All right, well, I think we got, gosh, this is so good, Matt. I just want to say thanks again for giving this not only to me, the coaching, but also, sharing it with the crew out here. So I think they get a lot. And yeah, everyone, make sure you check out, you could type !guest in the chat to check out Matt's website, learn more about Matt and his accomplishments, but then also you can snag his contact info to set up a coaching session with him. Or like he said, if you're a bit newer to poker and you want to kind of get to that point where you can get a lot of value out of the one-on-one coaching, you can go through the website that he works with, pokercoaching.com, absorb the material, get involved in the group sessions, and go from there. Everybody, thanks for making it to the end of my video. No one does that, do they? All right, look, I respond to comments, so please leave a comment below the description and let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, check out some of my last videos here, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button here. All right, my name is Drew. Peace out. Catch up with you later.